Welcome. On behalf of the Point San Pedro Road Coalition and the Wetlands Committee of the Coalition, I'd like to introduce our speaker today on the topic of the Vaux swifts at the McNear's Brickyard. We're delighted to have Rich Cimino of the Marin Audubon Society today. I am Bonnie Marmer, the co-chair of the coalition, and I am just delighted that our Wetlands Committee was able to organize this special event that is unique to our neighborhood. We had been hoping in this time of COVID to come up with some exciting events for our community, and this was something that we thought we would kick off our series of events for wetlands education and appreciation for our neighborhood. Thanks very much to Kathy Lenz of our committee for organizing this event. I also want to recognize our former committee chair, Rodney Reskin, for his years of service to our committee, and announce that we have a new committee chair, Winifred Johnny, who's going to be starting in soon as our new chair. In the meantime, we have lots of people to thank for making this event happen, not least of which is the McNear family that allowed Rich Cimino and Mike Wolpert, our videographer, who volunteered to video this event for us for this webinar. McNear's allowed them to go into the McNear's Brickyard to video during a time where social distancing is so important, and the public has actually been asked not to go into the Brickyard. So we very much appreciate that they allowed this to go forward so we can present something very special for our neighbors. The presenter today, Rich Cimino, has for many years been leading bird tours in North America, Central America, and Europe. And he has a tour company called Yellow-billed Tours. He is very active with the Marin Audubon Society, and he volunteers his services there, doing planning and leading of tours for Audubon throughout California. He and his partner, Janet Bodie, have been surveyors of the Great Blue Heron Rookery along the Point San Pedro wetlands. They are tremendous birders, and he has a wealth of knowledge with regard to the swifts, which without any further ado, I'll turn over to him to share with you today. Thank you so much, Rich, for being with us.
Good morning, everybody, or excuse me, good afternoon. And it's a pleasure to have been involved with Bonnie and the San Pedro Road Coalition to put this together. And what we've done here is pretty much what Bonnie outlined. I don't think she missed any of the finer points. It's taken several days to put this together. So we're happy to move forward. Marin Audubon is very pleased to co-opt this with the San Pedro Road Coalition. Thank you. Al, if you could put on your first PowerPoints, thank you. So what we have here is, this is me in front of the gates to the McNear Brickyard, and in a moment or two we'll be on the other side of the gates. But as Bonnie pointed out real thoroughly about the private property permit and acceptance from the McNear family, we're very grateful for that. And one of their requests is to show the gates closed after working hours, and that the public really isn't allowed beyond the gates at any time. During the working hours, there's large trucks coming in and out with loads of bricks, and other people coming and going. And of course, after the 5:30 hour, when they close the Brickyard down, the gates are closed. And we requested permission to do this. We told them it was an educational thing for the coalition and the Wetlands Committee, and they were very accepting, and we're grateful of that. Al, can we go behind the gates? Here we are. We're on the other side of the property line. It's after hours. This is approximately maybe 6 o'clock. This is a mid-September photo, so you can see it's still light out. And you can see the 3 chimneys. And of course, you see the Brickyard with the inventory and factory buildings and the outbuildings. So these 3 chimneys were built in 1902 through 1905. And the one on the far left and the one on the far right here are a technology of chimneys. Chimneys have a technology, and they're called the Hoffman type technology, and the bricks are interlaced. The middle chimney is a round chimney and pretty much standard construction. All of the chimneys are still open. They are not capped. So the Swifts have been using this location and these chimneys as their night roost. And the migration starts actually in early August with a dribble, a couple hundred birds a night, and it slowly ramps up and keeps going. And what we'll see in a video that we're going to show here in a minute is the swifts forming these large vortexes that swirl around the buildings. And at some point, just before dusk, 1 or 2 birds will start to drop in. And typically they don't use all 3 chimneys in one evening. And we don't know their sorting process or their process of evaluation, which chimney they're going to go into. This year, they're favoring the round chimney, but we've also had some big, what I call drops into this number 1 chimney, the far left. So this last week, to give you an example of the event, we've had over 70,000 Vaux swifts using this location. So these birds, and we'll show some distribution maps a little bit later in the presentation, but these swifts come all the way down from British Columbia, state of Washington, Idaho, a little sliver of Montana, Oregon, Nevada, of course, all of California, and some of Arizona. And they go into Baja California and Central America, all the way down to Venezuela for the winter months. And they're eating insects this entire migration process. And of course, when they start the spring migration, they're following insect hatches again. The chimneys here at McNear Brickyard are not used in any great volume in the spring migration. It's not clear to us at this point where the birds roost in the evenings during the spring migration. But here we are in the fall, September, October. And the site is used every night and in great volumes. We've had one night that was up to 17,000 swifts just pouring down these chimneys, and it's quite a spectacle. Some of the swifts come around the China camp through San Pedro Bay, China Camp, McNear Beach, and they come in through these, over these eucalyptus. Others come in from the Peacock Hill area where the golf course is. We've had reports from golfers that they have seen volumes of swifts coming over in the late afternoon. And a couple of the golfers have come down to see exactly what's going on and provide us with that new information. And then Bonnie herself, living on the wetlands, the San Pedro Road wetlands area around Loch Lomond and north, has witnessed reasonably big volume of swifts over her wetlands in her backyard. And boy, she's been blessed with that. And she's done some videos, and that sort of prompted us to do this presentation and where we are this evening. So in closing on the Brickyard, there are residents that live here year round. There is a residence back here, and there's a residence over here. And then there's a far gate here for access into the Dutro quarry. And there are workers that live on the quarry year round. So while this is a factory and it's a production facility, there's a lot of traffic. Even after hours, people are coming, going, doing their shopping and their errands. So if you're interested, you want to stay on the entrance road. It's best to have a scope. I use a scope. Everyone uses a scope. But 10 by 40 binoculars will do a good job of viewing the swifts. And lately, along the entrance road, there's a wetland, and you can view a lot of swifts very close because they're flying lower, they're hawking insects, and some are coming over. I believe it's called Brickyard Beach from the San Pedro area, from the Loch Lomond side. And also, as I mentioned a moment ago, some swifts are coming over from the Peacock area. So you don't have to be on the private side of the gate. And I want to emphasize that. You can get a good viewing of the swifts, including their dropping into the chimneys from outside the closed gates. So Alan, do you want to show the video of what we're talking about here with the swifts and their migration? So you can see this is an example of the swifts, just what I call flirting with the chimney. You can see some are dropping in, and they form these big vortexes, maybe 1,000, 2,000 birds just swarming in these big circles. And then there's outlying swifts over the bay, over the road, over the wetlands, over the eucalyptus, and they're probably feeding. We believe they're feeding off a hatch of whatever insects might be up at that time of the day. And also there's a sort of a swift choreographic entree into these chimneys where you can see this big group going down right now. But they sort of are polite in their wanting to roost. They let certain groups go in that stage themselves, and other groups will stay above, as I mentioned, probably feeding or staging themselves for the next entrance. But it's all very well organized. There's just a lot of politeness and respect as to who's going to go in. And if you're lucky enough, towards the end of the evening, you might see some swifts popping out because they cannot get a good position, and they are waiting for the other swifts to adjust themselves, and then they go back in. So it's not unusual to see some swifts leaving. And once again, I think it's just part of their choreographed scheme of things as to making room for each other and just a mutual respect. So what happens in the chimneys? These swifts have very strong feet. They have 3 claws forward, 1 claw back, and they're very sharp. And if you can imagine this chimney all the way down with swifts clinging on to there is, we'll rerun this. Thanks, Alan. They'll be clinging on the surface of the rocks in a vertical fashion. And with these sharp talons in their feet, in their claws, they just cling on to the chimney bricks. And it must be an amazing sight. We don't have any cameras in the chimneys, and we've approached the McNear's and they don't want to do that. And that's fine, because we have a good idea of what's going on just from understanding the habits of the birds in their natural area. So where do these birds nest in the spring when they come back to North America? They nest, the Vaux swifts specifically nest in large trees that have big open hollow areas from either fire or lightning damage or big branches breaking off and creating hollow areas. And the Vaux swifts nest in that type of habitat. And so on the fall migration, when they're feeding and trying to store up as much energy and fat as possible, they don't go surveying the forest. For instance, like Owen Poly Park, which has a very good oak savanna habitat. They fly right over that because they know they have this prime habitat of the chimneys that they can go down, and that will accommodate thousands of them. So what we're going to do now is we're going to bring up our PowerPoint presentation. And excuse me, we started at the end there, and let's see, we want to scroll. Here we go. So as Bonnie indicated, I'm Rich Cimino. I live here in Larkspur, California, and I'm a volunteer with the Marin Audubon Society, and have a lot of experience birding over the years, and she covered that, and we don't need to do that twice. So here is the Vaux Swift's distribution map. And as I mentioned, it's their northern limit for nesting is into northern British Columbia and some of the temperate forests there with large Doug fir congregations and other trees that are subject to windfalls and lightning and storms that strike trees and open up hollow areas. And of course, they go almost into Alberta, just a little sliver. But far western Montana has a good population, from central Idaho all the way to the Canadian border, all of Oregon and Washington, and into California for breeding, into the southern Cascades, maybe the northern Sierras, and all along the redwoods, up into Del Norte County, Humboldt County, Mendocino, Sonoma, and our own county, Marin, and a little sliver there, San Mateo, San Francisco. And as I mentioned earlier, you can see the migration path in the yellow here, comes through California. Migration, both spring and fall, brings them into Arizona and Baja California, Western Mexico, and all of the Central American countries, Belize, Guatemala, Nicaragua, El Salvador, Costa Rica, Panama, and then a sliver here in northern Venezuela. So these birds have approximately a 5,600 mile one-way migration, and they're eating the whole time and just building up their storage of fat so they can make this long migration, because they are a very small bird. That's the next photo. What do they look like? Let's go here. There's a photo of a Vaux swift. Notice the long wings, a very small body. So this is an edited photo, obviously, and the body of this bird is a little bit over scale. And they fly very fast. Their wing beats are a quick flutter. And you'll see this if you go to view the swifts from outside the Brickyard. You'll see their wing beats, and you'll hear them chattering. They're speaking all the time, talking to each other. They hunt by sight. They don't hunt by sound. They're not like an owl or a swiftlet that has echo sound reverberation to find a food source and guidance. These swifts have good eyesight and fly above and in clear blue skies. Swifts and swiftlets, excuse me, owls hunt by sound, not so with the swift families. So this is a bottom view that you'll see from outside the Brickyard. This is a top view if they're flying low over the marshland along San Pedro Road. You'll get a top-down look at them. You can see they're just a dusky brown gray, no real coloring. This bird might very well be a juvenile, a hatchier bird. It's got some speckles here. So they have this 4.5-inch body. They're cigar shaped. They're much not wider than a cigar. And this is some of the fun of watching them, is to understand their body size and understand the fact that their metabolism is so fast with their wing beats that they're constantly eating, and they're eating things that we never see. They're flying with their little beaks open and grabbing all sorts of insects. They have also a food source on spiders that are floating spiders. Termites, flying ants are also part of their diet. And what we have here is an overview of other swifts that come through the area but don't use the McNear Brickyard. And the swift family is one of aerial foragers, as I've been talking about, and they all have these long sickle-shaped wings that flutter very quick. They have very high metabolism, and they're searching in the air by eyesight, and they need these fast wing beats and these long wings to maneuver to get that next insect. They have extremely short legs. Mainly they have feet. We covered that. Their feet are 3 talons in the front, 1 in the back with very sharp claws, which allows them to hang on to the bricks in the chimney. Another swift that are just recently being seen, very, very small numbers like 3 and 4 and 5 in the Bay Area, is the chimney swift. That's regional distribution is the Midwest and the East Coast. But as you can see, they're into Manitoba next to Alberta, and sometimes new birds get caught, hatchier birds, juvenile birds get caught, and they may find themselves, as you can see with this dotted here, area, they may get off their migration route. They may not be following the adults, or it may be a weather event that forces them into the West Coast. This is what a chimney swift looks like. So it's almost very similar to the Vaux swift. It has a little grayer chin, you can see on the coloring, and the wing primaries and secondaries here are also a little riveted with the quills. You can see a little bit more color. They have this long quill here on the primary that has some white to it. You can see it here. So they are distinguishable. They don't quite have that notched tail, okay? But we don't want to spend a lot of time on the chimney swift, because we also have another breeding swift in our area, and it's the white-throated swift. And as you can see, it's year-round in the Bay Area. And mainly they're breeding in the Intermountain West and into Eastern California, Northwestern California, Northern California. Our birds in the Marin County area nest in the highway bridges like Highway 101. You'll see them in San Rafael underneath under 4th Street, 3rd Street. You may see them flying over hunting, but our highway bridges have drainage holes and also light fixtures, and they seem to tend to go into those round fixtures and nest. So basically, in the wild, they nest on rock outledges, and the highway overpasses sort of mimic that type of habitat, and they use it. So the black swift is an interesting swift, and it comes through Marin County in about May, and then returns again starting September. As you can see, black swift, all of California, Western California, Oregon, and Washington along the coast, and into Baja, and down here into Central America. The migration path is along water, but there are a number of nesting locations, and one good place to see them is Bernie McCarthy State Park in Shasta County. They nest under the waterfalls of the Pitt River, and they nest either directly under the waterfall, you can see them coming and going, or on a ledge type of rock that has moss on it. So black swifts are seen in Marin County, and they do come over through San Pedro Bay onto San Francisco, but they do not use the McNear's brickyards as a roost site. Interesting birds that I've seen behind Bonnie's home along the Loch Lomond shoreline and some of the wetlands, and of course over the wetlands in front of McNear's brickyard, are different swallows. This particular swallow is a northern rough-wing, and it uses China Camp, McNear's Beach, McNear's Brickyard Marsh, all of the wetlands between McNear's Brickyard down all the way down into the area of the Marin Rod and Gud Club. So you can see this swallow, and it is not a swift. It has a different wings. It has a different body structure. It's a bigger bird, has a different bill. Also short-legged. You can see the claws on this, similar to a swift. You can see this talon or sharp claws just hanging on to this wooden stump. So with that, we have a discussion of the habitats. Not all swifts are like the Vaux's swift. We looked at a few migrants that come through. Another nesting swift, which is the white-throated swift, all have a little different habitat. What makes the Vaux's swift such a phenomenal event that occurs every year from, as I mentioned, early August, they start coming in. I like to refer to it as a dribble. And then they just come into these huge volumes of 17, 18, 20,000 a night in September and October. Last night, there was 8,700 swifts. That's last Monday, or this Monday, a day ago. So the volume is still coming through, and it's already October 6th. And they'll come through well into October, maybe as late as October 20th, 21st, we'll start to see them fall off. So you still have a lot of time to go view the swifts along San Pedro Bay into the McNear's Brickyard. And the Vaux's swift, as I mentioned early on in the presentation, clings to the inside of the chimneys and the brick wall. And that is the same way they nest. Their nest in the oak trees, as I mentioned, or other trees that have been broken open, hollowed. Their nests are built in a vertical fashion, not in a round cup, like for instance, a robin or a bluebird or a number of other birds have round cups. Some birds like orioles have silk sacks. These birds, the swifts, build, specifically the Vaux's swifts, a vertical nest, and they cling into the nest, the female. The eggs are dropped in a vertical fashion as she incubates them. And as the chicks come out, they're groomed, they're indoctrinated, they're to be in a vertical world, both for feeding, roosting, and nesting. We covered their food, what their prey is. That's flying insects, spiders, flying ants, and other just insects in general. And they get all of this, they feed totally 100% on the wing. They're not a roosting bird, so they don't glean insects off of leaves or pine needles or anything of that sort. So they're an aerial foraging bird. I covered nesting there with habitat. We probably have, and I have looked for instance in Olm Poly Park and China Camp, nesting Vaux's swift. I have yet to find them, but those are good areas for local residents that use those parks in the spring to be looking for Vaux's swifts. If you start to see them in June and July, early July, that means there may be nesting pairs in our own county, and that would be interesting to learn. And so here we are. We're sort of at the end of our presentation. I want to thank all of you for attending the presentation and being interested. Special thanks on my part to the San Pedro Road Coalition and their Wetlands Subcommittee for their support in making this presentation happen. It's been a lot of fun. I've learned a lot. I've gotten to meet some really interesting, great people that are part of the coalition, Bonnie and Alan and Michael. And it's been really an interesting time for me. And if you're interested in doing some outdoor birding type opportunities, you can contact me at this website. And thank you all again for being interested. And hopefully you can go on the San Pedro Road Coalition website onto their Wetlands Subcommittee and become a member by adding your email. Thank you again and have a good evening.
Thank you, Rich, so much for a very informative event. We really learned a lot. This is a unique experience for those who can experience it, and you brought it almost into our homes by the video and the slides and your PowerPoint. Since you mentioned my experience seeing the swifts in my backyard, I've put that video up behind me so folks can see how the swifts were just diving down into the marsh and across the water. And it was quite a phenomenon. They're up in the sky. It's not a professional video like Mike Wolpert made at the Brickyard, but it's kind of fun to see how these amazing birds just zoom up and down and all around, and one can find them in their backyard if one looks in our neighborhood. So thank you for informing all of us. We do hope that folks will make a donation to the Audubon Society. That was very generous of you to volunteer to do this. And we know that the Audubon does great things. We want to support them. Thank you, Rich, and thanks to all who participated in this video, especially Alan Shavitz, who really did a lot of work to make this happen. So many thanks, Rich, many thanks, Alan, and Mike Wolpert for creating the video. That's it. We look forward to doing another event with you, Rich. Hope you can come back and educate us about other birds in our area. And we will also join our committee and be part of our group. Thanks again.
I'd love to do that at some point.